Today we're doing a deep dive into the PrimAI Power MT5. I think it's kind of a pun. It's like primal except with an AI. And we're going to look into this one because apparently they're using OpenAI's API to make trading decisions. And apparently he's also hard coding the key into the code, or it's integrated already. So using OpenAI in their API to effectively help trading bots make decisions is rather widely used by now. So like Brandon with the AIQ and the Mean Machine was really one of the pioneers in doing this properly. Like when ChatGPT first came out, all of a sudden there was this massive like hype on the MQL5 marketplace to sell bots, and everybody was kind of pretending to use AI in their bots, and most of it was rather false. But since then, like Brandon was one of the first to actually use LLMs. And then since him and a few other guys did it, I also integrated it into some of my bots, more on top of the existing fundamental strategies. So I think I'm one of the first to, not to toot my own horn, but to kind of use more options, data, and fundamentals in EAs. But there were quite a few pioneers as well in the LLM space that kind of opened up that marketplace for the rest of us to effectively show that there is a use case, and then we started to integrate it as well. So all that to say that now the use of AI in expert advisors is quite widely used by more sophisticated developers. So there's nothing to say that he's not using it. One thing to note though is that when it comes to the actual key, like he could be providing access, and I know like Chris from with the Risk Killer AI, I think was his bot. He did that as well, and actually I saw the key in his code. So pardon me, in his instruction manual. So I know that it's possible. But one thing to note as a developer is you do have to pay for the access. So depending on how many bots this guy sells, he might not want to have made that promise, because like he's getting a one-time payment for the EA, and depending on how many web requests it's making, he could be like spending $1 a day per person or a few dollars a day per person. And if he sells to 100 people, like all of a sudden he's going to spend $100 a day just on OpenAI web requests. So maybe he figures that he's not going to sell that many, or maybe it doesn't use the most sophisticated OpenAI models. It's using an older, cheaper model. That could be the case, but it's one thing is, as a developer, as a business person, you probably want to not pay for the API key, because fundamentally people should be able to choose what models they want to use. And if they want to use the super expensive, sophisticated models, which are going to cost a couple $100 a month, you as a developer can't support that as with an upfront payment. So that's why it's better to just let people choose their own models, pay for their own models, and then they can pick, I would say, like to spend $5 a month or to spend $500 a month, depending on the level of complexity which they are so looking for. But all that to say that it looks pretty interesting actually, because there is apparently a real OpenAI usage here, and that he's looking for like essentially support and resistance pullbacks. So this is quite interesting actually. So it's detecting trend on a higher time frame, it's waiting for a pullback on a lower time frame near the support and resistance or consolidation zone, and then it enters with a take profit to stop loss ratio of 2-to-1, and then it adds a confirmation with AI, which in my mind is usually the smartest way to use an LLM. You don't want it to make the underlying trading decisions. You want it to kind of complement a core technical trading strategy, and this is what this gentleman seems to be doing. So the one thing which is kind of getting me a bit skeptical is saying that he has an 85% win rate with a 2-to-1 risk reward. That I'm a little bit skeptical of, just because that would be such a massive edge over randomness. It's fairly unrealistic. So what I assume he's doing is that the fixed take profit is twice the distance of the stop loss. But usually people like in this situation would use a tight trailing stop loss. So your actual risk reward ends up being a bit inverted. So that would be my guess. So we have a real strategy. It's looking for like trend following trades, pullbacks into support and resistance levels. It's then trying to be high risk reward or high win rate, one of the two. And there is an AI filter on top of it. So quite interesting actually. Going here, we can see that supposedly it is running on the euro dollar, and it looks to be making enormous profits. But you can't really fault the guy, because this tends to be the MQL5 way of marketing. You just have like these crazy returns, which are obviously false, but it's kind of commonplace here. There's no live signal, which is not a great sign, because usually that's how you only know if a bot is actually working. But if we pull up this backtest I ran, it actually doesn't look that bad. Like, the returns are ridiculous. Like, we're 10xing our money with a 10% drawdown, but there are a few losses actually happening here. So to me, that was actually more reassuring than what I thought. So there appears to be actually a real strategy here, maybe just somewhat overfit. And what we're seeing is that it has roughly a 2-to-1, or actually a better than 2-to-1 risk reward, with roughly a 50-something% win rate. So that's actually not that crazy. Because if you have a 50-something% win rate, having a 2-to-1, like, this is granted very good. I would expect this to be more like 40% or 35% because we have such a positive risk reward, but it's not like completely false. If this were to be 85% and then this were to be a 2-to-1 plus, that would be obviously false. This looks maybe a little bit overfit just based on the statistics. However, there is a real strategy here. It looks to indeed be kind of a pullback with the general trend, and it is taking these really like almost swing trading style systems. It is more of a trend following one. Sometimes it's also going short, which is quite interesting. And let me go back on the daily, for instance. Like, yeah, it's trading quite a bit, but it's holding for very long periods of time. So actually pretty interesting. It looks like quite a neat system. And risk value, depending on break even, use break even, false, trailing stop. So like, there is the option of a break even and the option of a trailing stop, but that's not really, it's not being used too often. So yeah, pretty interesting actually. The OpenAI thing, I have no idea, but granted you can't backtest that, so it might very well be using it, and we would need to see some live performance to see if it's true. But at least from the backtest statistics, we're having a fair amount of losses, which is a really good sign because it shows that there might actually be something here. The actual trading strategy, it does appear to be doing what he says it's doing. And let's run a visual one here. Oh, okay. We are seeing different levels being drawn. Yeah, it's pretty interesting actually. So it's looking a little bit too good to be true, so I'm not so sure how it's going to perform super long term. It may have been fit to the current volatility of the euro-dollar in the prior Trumpian market regime. However, the strategy appears to be real, and at the same time, the fact that he is using OpenAI is possible, or very possible as well. He seems to have this panel set up, and I venture when you run it live, it actually will pull the real data. So the 10xing of your money with a 10% drawdown is a bit fishy, but at least he is taking sufficient losses that it's not blatantly manipulated. So yeah, looks to be a real strategy. I'd be curious to see when it actually goes live, because I think there is some overfitting here, how it will perform live, but it could be interesting. Let's wait and see how the signal looks, and then we can make a more informed decision afterwards. So guys, hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.